What if I told you Mars is a planet? This may surprise you if you have an IQ lower than 5, but otherwise you would already know this. You may also know that Mars used to have water, and perhaps even life. But who cares about some boring planet when we have the beautiful planet of Earth? Probably not you, right? Well, I don't care, and I will now instead be informing you on how humans will colonize Mars in a very few easy steps. Getting to Mars requires heavy transportation. As it turns out, you can't just hop in your Volkswagen and drive there on the I-4. You would require either a really expensive and powerful aircraft capable of somehow carrying 2,000 people, building supplies, a starter kit of food, water, and spacesuit so everyone doesn't immediately die. Also, according to NASA, it would take around 9 months to reach Mars. Everyone would probably go insane considering cramming them on a spacecraft to save space and end up eating each other. To avoid this, we always see how in movies people are cryogenically frozen and then woken up, but if we did that to our people, they would all die. Instead, a much smarter and obvious solution would be to transport everyone and everything on much smaller and nimble shuttles, perhaps on smaller flights and in a specific order. The best order would be to first send the construction supplies along with the construction robots first to establish a ready encampment for the humans. Next would be the food and water, which would have to have long-lasting canned food that would last until the colonists arrive, and still after for them to be, of course, eat it. Lastly, we would obviously need to land our people on the iron lands, who, like the supplies, would come in small colonial transportation shuttles, which would have to carry their own food and water for the journey. Living on Mars requires quite the number of supplies. Considering our colonists probably want to stay alive, we would need to feed them, water them, and let them breathe oxygen. To do this, they would first need constant supply chains from Earth to deliver the supplies of food they need. Water could be cleaned and reused depending on the budget spending of the colony, if they decide to install such system. Oxygen would certainly need to be recycled, as the supply of oxygen wouldn't be stable. After some time settling in, the colonists need to establish their own sustainable food sources. This will be no easy task. It may require additional food supplies and budget spending from Earth to expand the colony if it can't already support it, and would be required to choose what sorts of foods our colonists should have. Vegetables and fruits would be the best option, and the ones that take up less room with high yields would be best, and good for the time being. Our people on Mars can survive on Earth supplies for a while, but not forever. If our colonies wish to grow, we will require excavation of resources on Mars. Luckily, Mars has resources. Unfortunately, its abundant resource, iron, covers the surface but is in a rust state. This will require working technology from Earth to make this usable. If we had an iron-based colony, it could work. This will be necessary to expand our base to hold more colonists when reproduction occurs, and create more resources for those new little Martians. After the time on Mars, our colonists would probably like to reproduce, as is their animal instinct. To do this, the colony would have to be bigger, and there has to be enough people on the founding ship to avoid inbreeding. For this reason is why I stated before that we need around 2,000 colonists to support long-term healthy breeding. Reproduction will also be necessary for our colony to live on for the first generation and create more colonies on Mars. This would eventually lead to the establishment of the first Martian city, a huge milestone for extraterrestrial advancement. Like our nations on Earth, our Mars base will need a government. This isn't on stations like the ISS or Antarctic research stations, but with 2,000 people and growing, a government would prevent total anarchism. It would be extremely important what ideology it is, but the best option would be a free democracy, like we see in US and much of Europe. But an authoritarian or dictatorship faction would be even more dangerous than on Earth. Imagine a scenario where one person ends up having total control over the entire base's oxygen supply and threatens to cut it off to seize power. Not the best situation. For this reason, a democracy would be a must for a long-term stability. Maybe even a managed democracy if you're going super Earth style. Our new Martians will also eventually want independence, with supplies no longer needed from Earth and a self-sustaining population and government. Loyalty to Earth will no longer be viable, and it'll be true with the new culture of Mars, and they'll end up feeling more like Martians than Earth. We saw this as well in the American Civil War, when Americans fought for their independence. So the people of Mars will want the same. In fact, it'll possibly be easier, considering it'll take Earth 9 months for Earth to attack them, and that is even if they can bother to fund an attack so far away. Well, there you have it, the 5 steps to colonize Mars and eventually gain your own independence. This is still far from being possible, but if you follow my simple steps, I'm sure you'll find it easy and doable as long as you have at least $5 on hand. I appreciate you sticking around, and if you're my classmate, I'm sorry you had to endure that. Anyways, bye!